Well, hello. It's getting to be in the 80s, maybe even touching the 90 degrees fairly soon. And so summertime's coming. And I'm Dr. Bill.
And I'm Ted.
And we thought we'd try to maybe get a little bit of a jump on the season and talk about some really great wines that maybe you hadn't thought of for the summertime and summertime enjoyment. And Ted's brought us a wonderful assortment, an interesting assortment, and I'm going to ask him to kind of go over them with us.
Well, I think what we've got is kind of a nice little assortment of different varietals and a different taste that should appeal to just about anybody. And keep in mind that anybody that ever tells you that they just don't like wine, well, it essentially comes down to they haven't found their wine. So you need to go kind of explore some different varietals, different areas, different producers, and go out and really try to find what's going to hit your palate, right. And today we've kind of got a wide array of different tastes and different types of, wines. So we're going to start off today with this is Labanzi Chenin Blanc. This is actually from South Africa. Really, really neat little winery. They actually are very, very, socially conscious. They actually share a percentage of their profits with their workers and their grape pickers and so on and so forth. But Chenin Blancs are fun, and we don't get a ton of South African wines over here in the States, but the ones that we do get are usually very, very, very good. And Chenin Blanc is kind of a neat little varietal. In France, they refer to it as a Vouvray. And what it essentially is a nice kind of crisp white wine that's kind of more peaches, pears, and apricots. It's a little maybe slightly on the sweet side, but certainly not like a Moscato or a Riesling or something like that. So that's basically our first wine.
What would you maybe pair that with food wise?
Any kind of light cheeses or fruits, things like that. I mean, a lot of picnic food. Nice little kind of catch all. Little wine. I always thought Chenin Blancs were great for nice kind of, I don't want to say bland food, but you remember you just don't want you want each thing to complement each other. You don't want your wine to dominate your food. You don't want your food to dominate your wine. And Chenin Blanc's not a overtly flavorful wine one way or the other, but just kind of a nice, crisp kind of little catch-all. Fishes, shellfish, maybe a little shrimp cocktail or something like that would be good. So
okay, probably a lot of that'll go with this next one.
Absolutely. And this next one is Chateau Mercier White Bordeaux. A lot of times we have a tendency, especially over here in the States, we think about, we hear Bordeaux and we think red. And while there is a lot of fantastic, red wines made over in Bordeaux, some of the most, sought after, most prestigious reds in the world actually come out of Bordeaux. And those are a lot of Cabs and Merlots. But what people don't realize a lot of times is there's actually more white wine produced in Bordeaux than there is even red. And usually it'll be things like this. And this is what's considered a white Bordeaux. This is about 60% Sauvignon Blanc, about 30% Semillon, and about 10% what they call Muscadel, which is kind of a blending grape. But it's going to be a nice kind of crisp white wine. A lot of that's going to be the Sauvignon Blanc up front, little Semillon on the back end to kind of smooth things out, and just that little touch of Muscadel on the back end just to kind of balance the two. So, and I think you're a big fan of white Bordeaux, aren't you, Doc?
I am. I enjoy them a great deal. And interestingly enough, and we're going to have a session on what can you do with this particular grape when it's grown in various parts of the world. But yeah, enjoy it a great deal.
Absolutely. Next, that brings us into another French wine. This is actually a Beaujolais. And Beaujolais is kind of widely considered as the French table wine. Fantastically functional little red wine, maybe slightly sweet for those that are big, Cabernet drinkers or things like that. But, kind of a nice, very, strawberry cherry up front, very smooth on the back end, not usually very tannic at all. Great with kind of lightly flavored cheeses, breads, things like that. Actually, there's a lot of Beaujolais that's drank, around Thanksgiving because it's a great little kind of catch-all, wine for the whole Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving fare. Did you get into any Beaujolais on your last trip over to France?
No, I haven't yet, but I've been kind of confused about Beaujolais because there's Beaujolais Nouveau and there's classic Beaujolais. Uh, Depends on when it's released, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes some of it can actually be aged a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what you see a lot of times is released kind of around Thanksgiving is what they call Nouveau Beaujolais. And kind of think of that as, almost like a preview of a movie. And basically what that is the first offerings of the new Beaujolais vintage. And it's a very short fermentation cycle that they don't keep very long, but they're usually very light, you know, very easy to drink red wines, but they're also, like I said, kind of a preview of the upcoming Beaujolais vintage. But you can get into, what they call first growth Beaujolais, which are, very prestigious Beaujolais houses, and these wines can actually be aged, for a longer time. But, this is what they consider kind of more of a, classic, Beaujolais in there.
And it comes from the Burgundy region,
Absolutely, absolutely.
the
But this is
southern part.
what you consider in France. This is kind of what they call a vin de pays, which is basically just kind of a regular, table wine that comes from a large regional area. And in France, like in pretty much any wine, the more specific you get to, areas, you know, vineyards, even plots of land on the vineyard, individual lots, the usually the more prestigious and the higher quality, you get. So,
So what's this weird looking thing?
well, this is actually one that we've kind of featured before, but this is kind of a fun little spin on a rosé. Rosés have become extremely popular, especially for summertime white wines and things like that. People are kind of venturing away a little bit from your typical Chardonnays or even Pinot Grigios and getting into more of the rosés. Now, a lot of rosés you see out there are more Pinot Noir based or Grenache based in there. This one actually is from Spain, and this is what they call an orange wine. It's not made from oranges, but if you kind of look at it, the color of the wine itself is more orange, and that's because it's actually 100% Macabeo, which is a Spanish, varietal over there. Kind of a still nice, crisp, little bit of strawberry cherry up front in there on the palate and everything, but just kind of a different little spin on, the rosé, type of rosé style of wine. So
It also has to do, I think, with how long they leave it on the
mhm.
skins.
hmm Absolutely. And basically, remember, most all wines, if they pick up any color, that's because there is some contact with the skins and the juice. And that's what essentially gives any wine, color in there. So,
I've seen recently that actually they're producing some nice orange wines more north in the northern parts of Europe, which is
hmm
kind of interesting.
hmm it's definitely become a thing. And people are actually, seeking out orange wines where it used to be just kind of something cool that a sommelier or a wine steward in a nice wine shop would suggest as kind of a fun little alternative. But Doc, what are you going to be drinking this summer?
Well, just as an aside, we have tasted all of these at wine tastings at the Murfreesboro Wine and Spirits. We're not going to taste them today because you've still got to drive.
Yeah.
Um, but I can tell you for sure that they're very enjoyable. And this is just a way for us to move away a little bit from the Pinot Grigio, the standard Sauvignon Blancs, the and the rosés. Just begin, and one of our missions, I think, is to get you to think a little bit out of the box. And all of these are various variations of them, should be available at your standard neighborhood spirits and wine shop.
Absolutely. Doc and I always try to keep things interesting, and we want you to venture out there and try some different things. But also, if you've got any questions, got any comments, please don't hesitate to hit us up.
But you asked me what I'm going to be drinking. It's what you don't take back home. Because the best wine is what somebody else buys.
Absolutely. Free. If it's free, it's for me. So,
So, what do we say?
like, comment, subscribe.
Thank you very much.
Bye.